Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. It's the kind of coin you might find at the bottom of a change jar. Maybe buried in an old drawer. Maybe passed along without much thought at a gas station or vending machine, except, maybe, you didn't spend this one. Maybe something about it caught your eye. A glint, a weight, a name. Kennedy. That's no ordinary coin. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1998 Kennedy half-dollar with a D mint mark, minted in Denver. It's not made of gold. It doesn't sparkle with diamonds. But this modest piece of American currency holds more than just monetary value. It carries legacy, nostalgia, and even a surprising collector's price tag that'll make you check your pocket change. But how did we get here? How did a half-dollar from 1998 come to be worth $98 today? And why is it named after President John F. Kennedy, when he wasn't even alive during its minting? Let's go back, way back, to where this story really begins. The answer, in part, came in the form of coinage. By early 1964, less than a year after Kennedy's assassination, the U.S. Mint issued the first Kennedy half-dollar. It was more than just a coin, it was a symbol of national grief, unity, and respect. Demand was overwhelming. People hoarded them, not to spend, but to remember. Now, the 1998 Kennedy half-dollar minted in Denver carries forward this tradition, but with a few details that set it apart from its predecessors and successors. For starters, let's talk about that mint mark. If you look just below Kennedy's neck on the obverse, the head's side, you'll see a tiny D. That simple letter tells you something vital. This coin was minted at the Denver Mint, nestled at the foot of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. It's one of the oldest active mints in the United States and has churned out billions of coins over the years. In 1998 alone, the Denver Mint produced over 15 million Kennedy half-dollars, but here's the thing. While 15 million might seem like a lot, and it is, in the world of coin collecting, numbers only tell part of the story. Condition, rarity, and demand are just as important. And that's where this particular coin starts to shine. The metal composition in 1998 was standard for the time, a clad coin, meaning it was made of copper and nickel, not the 90% silver used in the earliest 1964 issues. So no, the 1998 D isn't a silver coin, at least not the regular issue. But that doesn't mean it lacks value, but there's more. A few of these coins were struck with exceptional detail, known as strong strikes. Others might feature minor die errors, double strikes, off-centering, or die cracks, which can make them uniquely valuable. Errors that would render another product defective actually enhance the worth of a coin, but the real kicker is this: a flawless 1998 D Kennedy half-dollar, in MS-67 or MS-68, with no visible wear, shimmering luster, and razor-sharp detail, can be worth upwards of $98, maybe more, depending on the market. And remember, this is a coin that, face value, is just 50 cents, and the story doesn't stop there. Collectors don't just value these coins for money, they value them for the legacy they represent. Holding a Kennedy half-dollar is like holding a piece of American memory. It's the sound of a coin hitting the jukebox in 1975. It's the jingle in your granddad's pocket. It's the weight of history and hope, wrapped in copper and nickel. It's this duality, common yet uncommon, ordinary yet exceptional, that makes the 1998 D Kennedy half-dollar so compelling. And as time marches on, coins like these will only grow in significance. Fewer and fewer are found in circulation. Each year, more are lost, melted down, or damaged. What remains becomes all the more valuable, not just in dollars, but in meaning. So, if you happen to come across a Kennedy half-dollar with a tiny D just beneath the portrait, and the date reads 1998, don't toss it in the coin jar just yet. Check its condition. Look for sharp details, smooth fields, and minimal contact marks. And if you think it might be in excellent shape, consider getting it graded. Because if it lands in the high 60s on the grading scale, you might just be holding something worth far more than lunch money. And now, the part you've been waiting for, the value. While lower-grade 1998 D Kennedy halves might sell for just $1 or $2 above face value, top-grade versions, those in MS 66 and higher, can fetch as much as $98 on the collector's market. Yes, $98. For a coin that cost 50 cents to make. And that's not a hypothetical, it's a real figure, based on real sales. Of course, values fluctuate. Markets rise and fall. But the underlying truth remains: what looks like spare change could be a small fortune in disguise. So the next time you hear that familiar clink of coins in your hand or feel the weight of an old $50 in a roll of change, take a closer look. History might be staring back at you, because sometimes, the most valuable things aren't flashy or rare, they're familiar. They're waiting. And they just need someone with a keen eye to recognize their worth. In the quiet hum of American life, with its everyday routines and bustling city corners, it's easy to overlook the small things that hold enormous value, not just in dollars, but in stories, legacies, and national memory. One such unassuming treasure is a piece of metal just over 30 millimeters wide and weighing about 11 grams, the 1973 Kennedy $50. You may have seen it before, passed it in your pocket change, or spotted it in a coin collector's binder. But what you may not know is that this particular year's $50 holds more than just face value. It tells a story of legacy, tragedy, artistry, and hidden worth. Let's rewind the clock for a moment, all the way back to November 22, 1963. A day that etched itself into the collective soul of America. President John F. Kennedy, young, charismatic, and full of promise, was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. The nation plunged into mourning. In the days and weeks that followed, America sought a way to honor the fallen president, a way to preserve his memory in a form both lasting and accessible to every citizen. Discussions quickly turned to currency. The $50, which at the time bore the image of Benjamin Franklin, became the canvas of choice. In record time, the United States Mint set out to redesign the $50 with Kennedy's likeness. By March 1964, just a few months after his death, the first Kennedy $50 was released. The demand was instant and overwhelming. Millions of Americans lined up to get their hands on the coin, not just for its monetary value but as a keepsake. It was a way to keep a piece of history close. Fast forward to 1973. A time of shifting tides in American society. The Vietnam War was winding down. The Watergate scandal was beginning to unravel the Nixon administration. And the nation was going through economic and cultural transformation. Amid all this, the Kennedy $50 quietly continued its journey, an anchor of tradition during a time of change. But the 1973 issue of the Kennedy $50 would be different in a way that only collectors and numismatists would come to appreciate. Unlike some previous years, the 1973 Kennedy $50 were not released into general circulation. That's right. They were minted exclusively for collector sets, specifically in U.S. Mint uncirculated sets and proof sets. That decision alone instantly made these coins more limited and desirable. People who didn't purchase mint or proof sets back then never got these coins in their pocket change. And as the years went by, that limited availability turned into scarcity. But to truly understand why this coin is so valued, we need to look closer at the design, the craftsmanship, and the subtle features that make the 1973 Kennedy $50 a small masterpiece in your palm. The mintages for these coins reflect their limited production. Only about 2.8 million uncirculated sets were sold in 1973, and around 2.6 million proof sets. Compared to the hundreds of millions of coins minted for general circulation in other years, these numbers are a drop in the bucket. And because these coins were not meant for pocket change, fewer of them were ever exposed to wear and tear. That means many of the surviving 1973 Kennedy $50 remain in near pristine condition, ideal for collectors seeking high-grade specimens. As the decades rolled on, the 1973 Kennedy $50 developed a reputation in numismatic circles. Collectors appreciated its scarcity, especially when trying to complete a full run of Kennedy $50. And as newer generations began discovering coin collecting, either through family, curiosity, or the growing influence of social media, interest in specific issues like the 1973 version began to rise. Many casual collectors or people who inherit old coin collections may come across a 1973 Kennedy half-dollar and dismiss it as just another 50-cent piece. But those who know what they're looking at recognize its hidden potential. This is one of those coins that quietly carries value, not just in dollars, but in rarity and significance. Of course, value isn't always about money. There's also the sentimental value, the connection to a historical moment, a family heirloom, or the simple wonder of holding a coin that's older than many of us. But yes, we have to talk numbers. So, what is the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar worth today? So the next time you're rummaging through an old drawer, cleaning out your grandparents' attic, or flipping through a coin collection at a flea market, keep your eyes peeled. The 1973 Kennedy half-dollar might just be hiding in plain sight, a quiet reminder of a president's legacy, a moment in time, and the surprising value that can be found in the most unexpected places. Whether you're a seasoned numismatist or someone just beginning your collecting journey, the 1973 Kennedy half-dollar is a shining example of why coin collecting is so much more than a hobby. It's a way to hold history in your hands. And sometimes, history turns out to be worth a lot more than you ever imagined. Let me take you back to the early 1980s, a time when the world was changing, America was evolving, and coins were becoming a whole lot more interesting to collectors. It was 1982. The year when Michael Jackson released Thriller, the first CD player hit the market in Japan, and the E.T. movie was melting hearts worldwide. But quietly, almost unnoticed, something was happening in the world of numismatics, something that decades later would become a source of fascination and value. We're talking about the 1982 Kennedy half-dollar, specifically the one minted in Denver, bearing the now coveted D mint mark. Now, on the surface, this coin might not look all that different from the hundreds of millions of Kennedy half-dollars minted since 1964. It still bears the iconic image of President John F. Kennedy on the obverse, a design created by Gilroy Roberts just days after the tragic assassination that shook the nation. And on the reverse, it still features Frank Gasparo's heraldic eagle, a striking symbol of American pride and strength. But behind this familiar face hides a fascinating story. A story that's been building quietly over time, finally placing the 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar into the spotlight for collectors and history buffs alike. Fast forward to the early 1980s, and the country was facing a very different kind of crisis: economic uncertainty. Inflation was rising. Metal prices were fluctuating. And the cost of producing coins was under scrutiny. The mint had already removed silver from circulating half-dollars back in 1971, transitioning instead to a copper-nickel-clad composition. By 1982, things were changing again, but this time, the shift was in how coins were presented to collectors. The half-dollar denomination had slowly been disappearing from everyday use. Vending machines didn't take them, and cashiers didn't hand them out in change. The public just didn't use them. So the 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar, although produced, was quietly slipping through the cracks, minted, but hardly noticed, seldom saved, and largely unappreciated. Most people who had a 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar tucked it away without much thought, or spent it. The idea of holding onto a Denver minted coin from that year in mint state just didn't cross most people's minds. After all, it was just another coin. Right? Not quite. Collectors today have realized that finding a 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar in high-grade condition, say, MS-65 or higher, isn't just difficult. It's become a challenge. Grading services like PCGS and NGC have received plenty of 1982 D submissions over the years, but very few earn those top-tier grades. The surfaces are usually nicked, the luster dull, the strike weak. All signs of a coin that was never meant to be special, yet turned out to be just that. And here's the kicker. As of now, a high-quality 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar can fetch up to $89. That's right, $89 for a coin that originally could have been pulled from your change at the grocery store. That's an increase of over 17,000% from its original value. And that's just for one coin. Imagine finding a roll of them in a forgotten drawer or an old bank box. That's a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered. but beyond the value, what makes the 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar so fascinating is the story it tells. It's not just a piece of metal. It's a snapshot of a time when America was shifting gears, politically, economically, and culturally. It's a coin that reflects the unintended consequences of policy decisions, like halting the mint set program. And it's a testament to how everyday objects, like a 50-cent coin, can become rare and desirable simply because they were overlooked. So, what should you do if you come across a 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar? First, check its condition. Does it look sharp? Does it still have that original mint luster? No major scratches or bag marks? If you think it might grade MS 65 or better, it's worth sending to a third-party grading service for authentication and slabbing. That $89 value we talked about? It applies to coins that meet those high standards, and even if it's not a top-grade specimen, it's still worth holding onto. These coins are becoming harder to find as more collectors scoop them up. The supply is shrinking, and the demand? Well, that's only growing. Coin collecting isn't just a hobby, it's a connection to the past. And every time we hold a coin like the 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar, we hold a piece of American history. A forgotten chapter. A silent witness to a changing nation. Next time you go through a jar of coins or get change from the bank, keep an eye out. That unassuming half-dollar might just be your entry into one of the most interesting and underrated stories in American numismatics. A story that started quietly in Denver, in 1982, and is now gaining the attention it rightfully deserves. Who would have thought that a coin worth 50 cents could one day be worth nearly $90? That's the magic of collecting. That's the power of history. And that's why the 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar deserves a place in your collection, and your heart. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss another deep dive into the hidden gems of coin collecting. And if you've got a 1982 D. Kennedy half-dollar of your own, drop a comment below. Who knows? You might be sitting on a little piece of treasure.